Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with S.R. Crickard. S.R. is a fantasy author whose vivid imagination and love for the natural world inspires her storytelling. She crafts enchanting tales filled with wonder, virtue, and faith, inviting readers to step into fantastical worlds where courage and character shine. When she's not writing, she can often be found exploring the woods, drawing creative inspiration from the beauty of God's creation. Through her stories, S.R. Crickard reminds readers of the extraordinary power of ordinary virtues and the adventure of living a faith-filled life. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can hear more about our newest book giveaway. Now, here's my conversation with S.R. Hi, Sarah. I am so happy to have you on the Christian Romance Podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited for our listeners to hear more about you and this wonderful story and just about your story as an author. So why don't you go ahead and let our readers and / listeners know just how you got started writing, what that journey looked like, and even what your faith journey looked like in that, how you became an author.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know, creativity is one of the things that, God gave me, is that I've always needed a creative outlet of some kind, and it's always been, a hobby. It's just like something like God gave me this desire to be creative, so I'm just creative in my free time. And it was really my mom that kind of nudged me in, I think, 2018, 2019, where she was like, this, you've been doing this your whole life. It's not going to go away. Like this, you can take it seriously. Like, it is okay to take it seriously. And writing has always kind of been the main outlet that I have for creativity, or at least just stories. She kind of nudged me to take it more seriously. And so I joined the Catholic Writers Guild, and I met some great authors there who were very critical in a good way, right? They helped me sort of I have this creativity, and now we can learn to kind of focus it and have discipline in it and have more intention with it. And so it was just, I would have this joke where I would show some writing and I'd say, okay, here, tear it apart, please. And, and they would just give me very good criticism, because that's how it gets better. Because I think if our stuff is too precious for criticism, then it's never going to get better. So, I was working on a novel, and everybody that I was showing it to in the guild was agreeing, there's something here, it's just not working, And so I had this idea of, I'm going to set it aside, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to do something different. And I challenged myself to write a short story using only tropes I had never used before.
Oh, cool.
And so, so I just picked a handful of tropes out of a hat and just started writing. And so I wrote a very long short story and shared it, and was very lovingly and firmly told, this is not a short story. You need to, this is a novel and you have to finish it. And so I just kept going with it. And, here it is.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So this was not supposed to be my debut novel. But it just, I think in writing it, because I had sort of taken the pressure off myself, I didn't go into it thinking this is my big debut novel. Mm-hmm. I gave myself permission to kind of grapple with certain things. And I think you see it in the book that there's this sort of grappling with how to have virtue and be a virtuous person, even when everything's falling apart. Because it's very easy to be virtuous when everything is sunshine and rainbows, and but when things get tough, that's when you have to make that decision of, is this who I am, or is it just something I pretend to be when things are easy? And as a homeschool mom, I was talking to my kids a lot about virtue at the time, and I just thought I'd love a story where somebody's in a magical world, and the only power this person has is the power to be virtuous in tough situations. So, like,
Ah,
in man's eye, they're ordinary, but the reason that they're the hero is because they're able to be virtuous.
that's
Because
very
that was,
cool.
yeah, so that, because that's the kind of story I want to be able to tell my kids. Um, is just that, it's heroic virtue that makes us heroic. It's not, being the weightlifting champion of the world or something like that. It's just being able to walk into a tough situation and say, God, what do you want me to bring into this situation? So I just ended up writing and writing and writing, and here it is.
I love it. It's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. And it's hard too because especially when it takes so much humility when you're getting started. Or just at all times, I should say. It doesn't even matter what time. It really does. But when you're just getting started, it's really hard to understand that you can still be that writer that you want to be, or you can still share that story you want. Whereas in the beginning, a lot of that can just stop people. Some people quit.
Yeah.
They just go, I'm not good. It's not necessarily, you can have that creativity and that talent that is so specific and personal, and God certainly puts that in each one of us and gives us a purpose with that. But like you said, honing that and focusing it and structuring it is a little different, and there is a science to it. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. There's so much help you can find out there on craft and things like that, which is very helpful. And that's what I'm so happy that you had that group to help you
Mm-hmm.
and kind of mold you and hone, because it is helpful, but you do need the humility to understand it's not personal.
Yeah.
It's going to make,
Yeah.
it will make you better. And just like how
Yeah.
God shapes us, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he refines us in his fire
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and it's sometimes the fire is really hot and we're
Yeah.
like, "Oh no, we don't want to walk through this." But it makes us better. It makes us
Mm-hmm.
stronger in every way. And in this case, a stronger writer for yourself. So, and I
Mm-hmm.
love that you gave yourself some freedom, that you were like, you know what, I'm going to hang on to this and just
Yeah.
do something a little freer,
Yeah.
because sometimes you can't get into that flow when you're trying to structure it a lot. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because some writers will talk about, like they always say, pantser versus plotter. I'm
Yeah.
kind of in the middle a little bit.
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
plants, you know, um, but
Yeah.
I think that, sometimes when you try to fit too much into that structure, it does thwart the creativity a little bit for certain people. And maybe that's what was happening with you. Maybe you just
Well,
needed a little freestyle.
well, that's what. So I was at that time. I thought I was a plotter. I thought I was like, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write an outline,
Yeah.
and then I'm just going to fill in the outline, and I'll have a novel. And the outline was great, but then my characters just kept going a different direction. And I just didn't know what to do with that. And so that's when I was like, just set it all aside and let's just like start with a blank page. And so part of what I learned in writing Misshelved Magic is that I'm not an outliner at all. And I really am just like a pantser. And like sometimes I know like a couple steps ahead, or maybe I know the very ending. I just don't know how we're getting there yet. But for the most part, I don't really have an outline because I what I think I learned about myself is that the plot follows the characters. At least when
Hmm.
I'm writing, the plot's going to follow the characters as opposed to the characters following the plot. Um, and I think just breaking out of what I thought a writer should do, like what the
Hmm.
writing process should be, was why I was able to um, write this.
I love it. I love so much that and that's a perfect example too of, God puts desires in our heart, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
like listening to that desire and it's like taking
Mm-hmm.
you this other way. And that was him shifting you sideways. And I love that he co-creates with us because it's so fun. There's so many times I see it so much. I mean, tears coming down. Do you have moments like that where you're like, "Oh my goodness, I did not know I was taking this turn. What are you doing to me?" Do you have those emotional
Yeah.
moments where
Yeah.
he surprises you with where he wants you to go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I,
See,
I think if you had told me like, oh, at any point in my younger life that I was going to be like a, a homeschooling mom that like bakes bread from scratch and like writes books, I would have just like laughed in your face.
yeah.
And now I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. And I wouldn't be here if it were up to me, you know? So it is really amazing how, you know, God will. One of my favorite things I heard recently was somebody said when when God makes a plan for you, he factors in your own stupidity. Which I think like he really has to do for me. Of like, you know, there are times where it's like I get dragged there kicking and screaming, but he does always get me where I need to be. So
Oh, that is funny. Oh my gosh, I so identify with
yeah,
that. Kicking and
yeah.
screaming. I think I actually put that on my website. I'm like, he definitely had to drag me into some things kicking and screaming and or drag me out of some things kicking and screaming because we just want our own way and we think we know best and whatnot. But we also live in a world where that's what we're told, that we can
Mhm,
fix it. We can
mhm,
do it, more self-love, more self-care. And don't get me wrong, because there is a good balance, right? So sometimes,
mhm,
like how you said, like how we were talking like earlier, about burnout. And
mhm,
we don't want to burn out in our professions. We don't want to
mhm,
burn out in our everyday lives. We don't want to burn out, as moms. We don't want to burn
mhm.
out, right? So we need to take that self-care. Now that's one thing, right? To balance that
Right.
life. And
Mhm,
usually you just need to kind of get into
mhm.
some real relationships, some prayer time, and have a little bit of you time. Even if it's in the bathroom, I can't even tell you how many times I have just locked the bathroom door
Mhm. You just need to
and
go
I'm
in
like,
there with a granola bar and be alone and
yes,
like yeah,
exactly. Sitting
yeah,
on the floor, like, listen, guys,
right.
have at
And
it,
their little
Kay.
fingers are under the door and they're like, "Why are
Exactly.
you in there?" Yeah.
Exactly. Well, my husband will get mortified. If I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom, he's like mortified by it. So I'm like, okay, that's my escape. Go to the bathroom. No, he's been fantastic. He's so
Yeah.
wonderful with just being a partner. Like how you said your husband's
Mhm.
like, you say I'm gonna go buy a giraffe, he's gonna go build a big fence.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
He's
so
so
wonderful.
like laid like he is like look up laid back and it's a picture of him. He's just so
Aw.
he's like, "Okay, like let's go." So, and he's taught me a lot about just trusting God and not like
Aw.
holding on to plans so tightly that you like won't let God have them, you know? Of just, you know, he's an Eagle Scout, so he's, you know, always be prepared, but he doesn't like this is my plan and it can't change, you know? He's like, "Okay, we have a plan. We might have to shift the plan. We're going to see where God takes us," you know? And I think I really needed that in my life, so.
Oh yeah, and that's beautiful because I
Mhm.
think everybody really needs that for sure because it's
Mhm.
very true and plans usually shift. And that's the hardest part I think because we
Mhm.
just want all of it is just wanting to hold on to control as much as we can
Mhm.
and do what we can for the most part. So people like
Mhm.
that, like your husband, my husband's
Mhm.
very similar too. He's very very resourceful person. He's
Mhm.
very much like, it's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out kind of thing. And he's
Mhm.
like, we're opposite in so many ways, like
Yeah.
so many, like probably
Yeah.
more ways than we're alike. But the ways that we're alike are, it just works, it's
Mhm.
just work. Like he eats the wingettes and I eat the drums. So like when we get an order
Yeah.
of wings, like
Yeah.
that's like a
Perfect.
perfect, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
perfect picture of how
It's
we
funny.
compliment each other. But yeah, no, I love it. And I love that you said about just going back to what you were saying about in the story and writing stories is teaching that virtue,
Mhm.
that virtuous characters. That's really tough because I think that we are kind of getting away from like that kind of old fashioned, like, Superman style hero where, hey, he's powerful and good just triumphs over evil. A lot of things it's like, there's a lot of stories out there now that are just kind of getting away. It seems like people are wanting that more. It's like more refreshing now just to have like a good story and not necessarily an agenda with it, like kind of shoved in there, especially for kids and for young adults, I would say. So, what would you say now with Misshelved Magic? So, how did you get into like the fantasy? Because it's like a fantasy style book, right? So, how
Yes.
did you get into that genre? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's well, I think to be a writer you have to be a reader. So like I've always read I read a lot of genres, but I'd say fantasy is probably like 60 to 70% of what I read. So I read a lot of fantasy. Um, and I also just have, like I said, I was that imaginative child that was like, there's fairies in the backyard, and my mom would be like, okay, go write that down, and like whatever you say. So like, and she encouraged me from a young age of like, go write it down. And I'm
I
like,
love
now
it.
as a mom, I'm like, yeah, go write that down.
Go write it down.
But it, fostered a habit of expressing myself in writing. And so I like the freedom of that fantasy allows, because it's your imagination. And I think, we God is creative, he is creator. And I think that it's kind of fun to participate in that, because like we're made in the image of God, which means
Mm-hmm.
like we have some of God's attributes, and it's fun to participate in that creativity of saying like, I'm gonna build a world. It's fictional, I can't actually make a world, but I'm gonna build this world, and I'm gonna like make the people, and I'm gonna like see what happens. And obviously it's not, like God actually made the world and people, but there's something fun about participating in that creativity that is a mirror of God's creativity. And so I think fantasy just really like, it's just like, you can literally, books can fly, and like there
I
could be
know.
like magical libraries, and yeah, and like dragons and stuff. So
Love it.
yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's what I meant to
Mhm.
ask you that first, earlier, whenever, because I was like wondering if that's like the main genre that you read in, which
Yeah.
I would imagine you did, in some way. Like you said, as an author, you want to be a reader as well. So how do you infuse that virtue
Hmm.
within your characters?
Hmm. I think, because like I said, I just like the idea of having a very ordinary, in the eyes of mankind, person, and yet you have all these like powerful people who can do magic, and they can, you know, this and that, and yet the person who's actually affecting good things is just the person that's humbly showing up and trying to discern what the best thing to do, like what's the best next step, what is the virtuous thing to do. And then also, I thought it was very important that, because I think perfect characters are kind of boring, but just to show that characters, when they mess up, apologize or acknowledge it, and kind
Mm,
of acknowledge, this happened, and I need to move forward, trying to do better, trying to improve. So, because virtue, you have to practice, because you can't. I heard this analogy once I liked, and it said one of the ways you know what kind of fruit you have is when you squeeze it, what juice comes out. Because when you squeeze an
mm,
orange juice comes out, not apple juice. And so when life kind of like squeezes us, that's when we really find out what's in us. If we
mm.
respond with generosity, humility, if we're able to take criticism, if we're able to do those things. I think we've all probably had situations where something happened and we reacted very badly, right? And like what came out was not virtuous and was not the best way to handle it. But I think that it's something we practice and we become better at in the moments where it's harder, still having those virtues.
Hmm.
So I wanted characters that were doing that.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
So before, because I can't wait to get into your character, like this book and your characters specifically. And before I know anything, I'm just wondering how I love the contrast of the quote unquote ordinary character
Mhm.
having the virtue,
Mhm.
whereas the magical characters
Mhm.
don't.
Mhm.
And they're the ones very flawed. So in a way, it seems like the ordinary character has the flaw is no magic. But in
Mhm.
reality, it's not really a flaw,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way, because it sets them apart. And because if they would have had, it's almost a strength in contrast to the others who do, which I really love that, because we see a lot of, and I love magic. I love, it's funny. I just have, like I was telling you, I haven't gotten into too many. I always read contemporary romance.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is my year for reading different things. Like you said, I'm going to do different things with my tropes. I'm going to try different tropes.
Yeah.
I am taking your lead. I'm going to try
Yeah.
different books that I don't usually read, and that's what I'm going to do because I love the stories. I love the
Mhm.
magical worlds, and I love all of that can be included. And I think that that's such a neat contrast to what a lot of the other books have because it's and don't get me wrong, the magic is super fun. I love that. But you have that, but the hero is like the ordinary hero, which I just think that that's so awesome.
I think that that is almost the it because you said this earlier that I think we're seeing a lot that people are more interested in like the anti-hero or like these
Yeah.
stories where it's like we're going to tell this story in reverse where the bad guy's actually the good guy, and that's all super interesting.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's an interesting take, but when I see that becoming more popular than good triumphing over evil, it
Mhm.
makes me wonder like where are our priorities as people. And so and people, we like this idea of like the anti-hero who's not, like like Superman who's just perfect and all of that, and that's fine, but instead of taking it in the direction of this person is not trying to be good and is kind of accidentally being good, to just be like this person doesn't think they're a hero and
Mhm.
they are, because that's kind of that's all we can achieve. That's not fantasy. Like we really do, just like day in and day out we have opportunities to to do good, and like what a gift that is, because we that's not something. God didn't have to do that. He didn't have to allow us to participate in the good, we could just be dragged along for the ride, and instead we are participating. And so I think that kind of viewing that as heroic. Yeah, just my little fantasy heart is like, yes, I can be a hero every day.
Oh, absolutely, it is, and because I love that, I know that I personally love that nobility factor in that, so anytime a
Mhm,
character has that, especially characters who don't think that they have it,
mhm,
that always resonates with me so much in characters. I will say, in just talking about, like, on a Marvel, for example, I loved Captain America because of that nobility that he had, but then I also and Spider-Man as well, but I also kind of I like the heroes that don't really know. Like I have read or I Hunger Games, I have to say, Katniss, that's kind of her thing. She's not trying to be a hero. She doesn't
right,
think she's a hero. She wants to do
right,
one thing that's good, and that's
mhm,
save her sister, and that's it. And then it just spirals and goes out from there. I feel like that is such a when it shows up organically like that in the hero, like they don't even know, they just want to do one good thing,
mhm,
that it makes for a really good story because then you can kind of, you can snowball everything, make it all out of control, but you can see their growth and then how other people and like the reader is seeing their heroic tendencies more and before they do usually, which is really, really fun.
well, I think it resonates because that's how we live our life. Like, I don't know
Totally.
what God is doing in my life. I
Yep.
just have to make the right decision. I have to discern the right decision now, and then when I get to the next one, I have to discern the right decision then. And
Yep.
that's the only way that we do anything good, is by just following the lead of those circumstances that God puts us in. And so seeing a character navigate that is just so relatable, of
Mhm.
like they don't know how this is going to turn out, but they're discerning in the moment and taking it one decision at a time, which is all we can do.
Oh yeah. And what a good example too. And that's what's so fun about Christian fiction is that we do have the opportunity, like you said, to create alongside the creator. And he's like he obviously helps us along the way because without him, there's no way any of this could get put together. But what's fun about it is that we have the opportunity to learn about these things vicariously through characters who are doing these things. And because that's what we all want to do, but we fail. We
Mhm,
do. We make
mhm,
mistakes. We fail. We make poor decisions, like you said. We make bad choices. So seeing characters who may make a bad choice or are making the good choice, and this is why, and seeing the aftermath of that. It's great. It's wonderful because it is ingrained in us. We all, I feel like, have this good inside of us from God that we do want to do naturally do the right thing, but we don't. We don't
Yeah.
sometimes. And it's so nice to see characters like that, like who are flawed, but also who are good and who apologize and who
Yeah.
recognize,
Yeah.
because it's healthy, especially for, so your book wasn't necessarily written for just adults in mind. So you
Mhm.
say that your book is really for the whole family, but I look at it, especially you being a homeschool mom and other homeschool moms listening, something for the whole family like that. Yes, there can be a romance, which is what we're,
Mhm.
the whole purpose of our
Yeah.
podcast today,
Yeah.
but the romance also emulates our relationship with God, with Jesus.
Mhm.
We are his church. We're his bridegroom, or we're his bride. He's our bridegroom. And I love that what a wonderful way to show younger people, yet what younger adults, younger kids is like, no, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. And this is what we do after, we ask for forgiveness. We focus on this, it's just such a good way to do it. And in a fun way, writing about magic and flying books and stuff. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, no, and you brought up romance because
Yeah.
that's why we're here, and I knew I knew again just talking about like writing in tropes that I had never written in. I knew from the outset I had always felt like the angst in the story needed to come from the romance, and I was like,
Mm,
what if this is just two people that meet each other and don't have like they just have a normal progression of like there's no angst. It's just two people figuring out like how do we relate to one another? How do like what's our style? What's our what's our relationship look like? As opposed to having the tension in the story come from the relationship because
oh, okay.
having it be more what's going on as the relationship is developing and because I mean, isn't that kind of like that's how you get to know someone is you continue to live life and things might be
Mm-hmm.
happening to you as you're figuring out how you relate to this person and where things are going and all of that. And so it turned into just kind of this thought like me kind of exploring like what does a really healthy like courtship look like between two imperfect people who
Yeah.
don't have a manual on how court one another. Yeah, and it ended up being like really fun to not have to like imbue drama into it that just didn't need to be there.
No, that is really fun. And because you can make the tension come from outside.
Yeah.
They can be, because
Hmm.
if they have an initial attraction, which usually
Hmm.
happen. I mean, well,
Hmm.
enemies to lovers isn't always,
Yeah.
that one they
Yeah.
have to grow, and friends to lovers too, usually. But those common tropes, the tension can certainly come from outside. I mean, there's definitely those romances are fun too, because you're just like, oh, we just want you guys to be together.
Yeah.
Stuff stop happening, like you just want them to like kiss,
Yeah.
and just hug and be together, so yeah, 100%, 100%. So why don't you talk about your characters, talk about the story a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So the main character is Adelina. She is an ordinary, we already talked about this. She's an ordinary young woman who has gotten a job as a librarian and just thinks of herself that way. I'm nothing special. I like to read. I'm going to sort books, and life is quiet and life is good. And so she gets this job, and she is told day one, uh, you're working in the history section, and the history section is next to the magic section. And as far as you're concerned, that does not exist because you're an ordinary person. You can't go in there safely. The books fly and put themselves away anyway. So you don't need to go back there, pretend it doesn't exist. You just stay over here. And she's like, that's cool. I'm ordinary. That's fine. And so, but she finds a book, a magic spell book in her section that won't stay where it belongs. And so she needs to figure out what's going on. And so she meets Leon, who's a student at the College of Magic, and they have their initial attraction. And she's like, well, he knows about magic. So she kind of pulls him into the mystery. And as they're trying to figure out what's going on, they're also developing their friendship and their relationship.
I love it.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Immediately when you said that these books fly on their own anyway, and one is left behind, that is such a fun story already. I can just tell it's so fun. She's just trying to do her job, and
Yeah.
this spell book
Yeah.
is creating havoc.
Yeah.
I can picture it. I mean, I really can picture it in my mind. Like her just like, what's happening? I don't understand. Why can't I go in there? And
Yeah.
then I hope she goes in there. I don't want you to give away spoilers.
I won't.
Oh,
Yeah, but she's like, that what's going on? Like, I need to know. I can't ignore this. And I that was actually one of the things. So the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, it's not Christian fiction at all, but it's comedy. It's what do you call it? Parody. Like it's a
oh,
lot of
okay.
parody. And he has there's a library it's not, mine is not like exactly like it, but just one of the things that was in the back of my head is he does the spell books just misbehave all the time in
Oh,
his
yeah.
one. And so I just thought that was so funny, and I was like, wouldn't it just be so funny if there was just like this one book that was just like not doing what it's supposed to, and just like causing havoc of like, "Ooh, why won't it stay where it belongs?" So I thought, yeah, so I thought that was funny. And because I had this sort of taken the pressure off myself to be too serious about it, I was just like, if something makes me laugh, I'm going to put it in there. So
Yeah.
it ended up being like, there's a lot of humor in the book. There's a lot of like lighthearted moments and like funny moments. So
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah,
And it's almost like the spell book is a character
yeah,
in the
yeah,
book, right?
yeah.
Because if I mean they have, and that's what is so funny. Because if they're
Hmm.
acting like, if it's acting on its own and it's
Hmm.
going over here and she's like trying to,
Yeah,
I can like picture her fluttering around with it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like and it just
yeah,
keeps going back to that same history
yeah,
section part.
yeah.
I'm like, and then here's me with the romance mind. I'm like, she probably likes the spell book. She probably likes
Right.
one of the history books. And
Yeah.
that's a whole other
Oh,
spinoff.
that's funny. No, that's funny. Yeah, that would be funny. Oh
But
gosh.
oh,
See,
girl,
I'm
I
like,
just
there are more
planted a
books
seed.
coming.
I'm telling you, we're planting seeds. I
Yeah.
could put a romance in anything. I actually have, which is like, I don't know if that is a gift or if that's a bad
No,
thing.
no.
It's so funny because my writers group girls, oh my gosh, I love them, but they write middle grade. Okay. I write adult Christian romance, and no joke. I was reading, we do critiques and stuff. And I was doing this one critique, and it was like one, like the only part in the book where her character starts to stumble and a boy character catches her. Meanwhile, the boy character is her brother, but I forgot that like when we were talking about it. And I go,
Yeah,
"So who is this character? What is
yeah.
going on here?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh." So the one my one writers group friend said, "Oh my gosh, Kelly, we're going to have to get the water spray bottle. Like you like this is middle grade." And I know I'm not trying to plan it. I just was asking because it was a romantic moment, but if it's her
Yes.
brother catching her, it's
Yeah,
okay. So
yeah.
it was just funny because they're like, we're just gonna spray you down like how you spray the cat or something to get off the couch.
That's funny.
Oh, it's so great. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the spell book like the something in the history book, something, maybe
Well,
it was, I don't even know, like an 1800s history book or something.
I'm not going to give any spoilers, but they do figure out what's going on, and that also made me laugh out loud when I was writing it. So they do figure out what's going on, but yeah, and it's like, but by that time they have chemistry between them, and
Love
now
it.
they have a new mystery to solve, and yeah,
It's very fun. Very forced proximity. I love it. I like that Leon is helping her,
Mhm.
and he has, can you say their powers or do you not want to spoil it?
No, so it's not that every person has a
Oh,
different
okay. They
powers.
do spells.
Yes. So you
Okay.
have to have it. You have to have it written down. It doesn't work unless it's written down. And so, um, that's what the spell books are, is like you have to go back there and get the spell or else you can't do the spell.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's actually really annoying that they fly away after you've had them so long, because like you can't like have a library of spells in your house or anything like that. They all just float away.
Oh.
So yeah,
So it's almost like everybody's like borrowing or something. Like it's
yeah,
like they can do the magic, but then the
hmm
spells decide to go back and they like
hmm
fly back into the where they need to go. Oh, that's cool.
and Adelina finds this out very early on. There's actually like a creature in the magic section. It never comes out, and they're pretty sure it is what is taking the books back. So like, people can
Oh,
go in there, they can take books, and then it like takes them back and puts them away. So that's why she's like, why is this spell book out here? Like it should be able to be retrieved by the creature that no one will tell me about back there.
that's cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Oh, it sounds wonderful. And then Leon and Adelina. I love that name, Adelina. I think that's so pretty. That's very cute. And it sounds fun. It just sounds like a fun
Mhm.
read. Like you said, could be for the whole family, but it just sounds like a very fun read. I love it so much. How did you? So we're almost at time. I usually like to ask our guests this. Writing Christian books, it's a little different. We have a different way that we kind of do things. We do through prayer, through relationship with God. Is there any like verse that really impacted you while writing this, or a personal verse maybe that helped you kind of along the journey? Because it's tough. It's hard
Yeah.
to do all the things, to stay focused, like you said, even have that humility and getting the critiques and things like that. Was there any verse that really kind of stuck out to you?
There is, and I am horrible at memorizing. I know it's in Revelation 21, and it's the he shall wipe away our tears and our.
Oh,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm so bad at memorizing,
No,
but
that's okay. I'll put it in
that
the show notes though. It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, and just this idea that anything anything negative is being transformed for good. Like nothing negative can exist in God's presence. It will turn to good. It will be used for good.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's very similar to in Romans. In Romans, I
Mm-hmm.
want to say 8:28, where he says all things work together for good for those who love him.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar. And that's wonderful. Yes, absolutely. And that definitely sounds like how you were talking about virtue. It goes very hand in hand with that,
Mm-hmm.
and with your character trying to work everything together and make everything fit and make it all figure itself out, and just trying to figure out the mysteries and things like you said. Oh yeah, that's absolutely can see where that resonates. That's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. And it's very encouraging. Because he does. He does do that. He turns all things to good. He's our creator. He's going to, do his best. But the thing that messes it up, the not that messes him up, but the things that get messed up is our free will, right? Like
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
choices, we choose, but that's also a gift that we have that choice, because it makes us appreciate him that much more and working
Mm-hmm.
all things together for good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if readers and listeners want to get this beautiful Misshelved Magic book, where can they go and where can they connect with you?
So it's available. It's available on Amazon, Audible, Chrism Press's website. It's Chrism, CHRISM. Look at me
Oh, cool.
spelling. But Chrism Press's website, as well as my website. If people order it from my website directly, I like to like personalize them a little bit before I send
Oh,
them off. Um, so yeah, it's available, and Barnes and Noble, I think. So everywhere.
awesome. Barnes and
Yeah,
Noble? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
on the
Oh,
website. I did go into the store. They don't have it in the store, but
they
it's on the
don't.
website. No.
Yes, I was just telling you, I just went into
Hmm.
Barnes and Noble the other day and I was like looking, I'm
Hmm.
like looking for all my Christian romance authors. I'm like, they need bigger space. I almost went to
No.
the store. I'm not even joking. I almost was like, what's going on?
Hmm.
But I love looking for, I was gonna say I would go in the store and look for it.
Hmm.
Wonderful. But I will say, and just for the listeners as well, go to the website, because you can always check, if an author has the book available on the website, you're always going to get some goodies, whether, no matter what it is. And it's always very nice for authors to have that direct connection with you, because it's that you're who they're writing for.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And I just love that. So what is your website? Is it your name, SR
Yeah,
Crickard?
it's
Okay.
srcrickard.com. Just
Gotcha.
all one, no spaces or dots or anything. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am so happy that we got to chat today and we have this wonderful book to read. And did you have any last like encouragements or any last things you would want to say to the listeners?
I think that just the thing that has been on my heart and mind this whole time is just none of us are perfect, and it's just about practicing virtue, because it's never going to be perfect, but it can get better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell to get notified of new episodes. We love blessing our listeners with exclusive interviews and, of course, amazing books. Each month, we host a themed book giveaway where you can win a selection of Christian romance novels and a few extra goodies, too. This month's theme is Timeless Love. We're giving away 7 powerful Christian historical romances by best-selling and award-winning authors. From courageous women and sweeping adventures to heartfelt journeys of grief, redemption, and enduring faith, these stories will inspire and uplift you. Whether you're listening as the episode drops or catching up later, no worries. You'll always find the link to the most current giveaway on our website, ChristianRomancePodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.